Yo, what's up, my fellow immortals, and welcome back to Holy Ground Gaming. I'm your host, Russell Nash, and this is the #1 spot for Highlander, the card game. This is the next video in the series called Immortal Spotlights, where we take a look at the immortals that are found in the game and we spotlight the best cards that come in their sets. And this video is going to be covering the Kurgan, one of the most notorious villains in the entire franchise and in the Highlander universe. I can't wait for this video. It's going to be super fun. I hope you guys are pumped for it. Stick around to the end of the video where I give my holy ground rating, where we talk about the power of the immortal, the lore accuracy, and the fun factor. I can't wait to dive into it. So without further ado, let's check out and see what the Kurgan has to offer. So the Kurgan has a couple of different personas that you can use when you're going to build and play as the Kurgan. Now, the first persona text is different from the others. Now, the first one says, your non-ranged attacks that do damage do an additional point of damage. During your may-do, must-do phase, you may discard one strength from your hand for each location in play to ignore one location in play for the remainder of your turn. Very good power. It's boosting your damage, and it's also going to allow you to get around locations that your opponent or yourself have in play. Very good power. I love this power. Now, let's take a look at his second persona and see what that power has to offer. Now, the Kurgan's second persona power says, you may make 3-card hard exertions. If you do not play a defense against any of your opponent's attacks, your first attack that turn does an additional point of damage and cannot be defended by your opponent from their hand. So basically what that's saying is, if you want to make a power blow, you don't have to make a 5-card hard exertion for a power blow. You can make a 3-card hard exertion for that power blow, which is deserving of the Kurgan because he's a very powerful immortal. He's one of the most powerful immortals in the game. And that's what Ramirez was talking about when he says he is the ultimate warrior, right? So I think that's a very fitting power for the Kurgan. Now, it also says that if you don't play any defense against your opponent's attacks, your first attack that turn is going to be doing an additional point of damage, and your opponent can't defend that attack from their hand. Very good power, very strong, very deserving of the Kurgan. So I think that both of these persona powers are good. They offer good versatility when you're going to be building different kinds of decks for the Kurgan. So let's take a look at the special cards that come in his set that I feel are the best ones and need to be spotlighted. So the first special card that we're going to spotlight is called Master of the Game. This is a situation. And it says, before making a hard exertion, name an attribute like strength, toughness, agility, empathy, etc. You may pull one card with that attribute from the exertion to your hand. So essentially, if you're going to be using the persona that allows you to make a 3-card hard exertion, it's going to allow you to name an attribute. So for example, I make that 3-card hard exertion to make one of my attacks a power blow. Before I make that exertion, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to call strength, right? And in those 3 cards, if one of those cards has a strength attribute, I can take that card and put it right into my hand, okay? So that would mean that the other 2 cards are going to go to my discard pile. So instead of losing all 3 of those cards, I'm able to take one of those cards with the chosen attribute and put it in my hand. Very good card. This mixes perfect. This goes perfectly with his persona power, where you're going to be making a 3-card hard exertion. I love this card. Now, it is a master's card, right? So the Kurgan, keep that in mind. The Kurgan is definitely a master of the game. He's been around for a long time. He's one of the strongest immortals, but this is a master's card. So keep that in mind when you're going to be building a deck if you want to include this card in your deck. One of the best cards in his game, in his set. That's why it's in there. That's why it's being spotlighted. Let's take a look at the next one. So the next special card that I feel should be spotlighted, it's called Ambush. Now, this is an event, right? And it says play in conjunction with the basic attack. That attack cannot be blocked or dodged. If your opponent successfully defends that attack, their first attack played cannot be blocked or dodged, right? So basically what that's saying is that, hey, you're going to play this event, right? And you're going to play a basic attack, okay? Now, what this event is allowing that basic attack to do is making it unblockable and undodgeable. But keep in mind, your opponent's first attack, if they defend this attack, it cannot be blocked or dodged either. But if you build your deck correctly, that's not really going to bother you. But what it is going to do is it's going to cause some problems for your opponent, right? So let's say you're playing the persona where you can make a 3-card hard exertion, right? So you make your 3-card hard exertion to make an attack a power blow. You throw down your basic attack, and that attack is now a power blow, right? Now with ambush, it's making that attack unblockable or undodgeable. And that's very strong, right? An unblockable attack and an undodgeable attack is very strong. That's going to get both of these. Now, so keep in mind that it's also going to make your opponent's attack on their turn, their first attack, it's going to be unblockable and undodgeable as well. But like I said, if you built your deck correctly, you're not really worried about that. This is a great card, definitely a good event card to have. That's why it's in there. That's why it's being spotlighted. Anytime you can make an attack unblockable or undodgeable, you should try to do that. So let's take a look at the next special card that comes in his set. So the next special card that comes in the Kurgan set that should be spotlighted, in my opinion, is called Follow-Up. This is an event. It says you may play an additional attack this turn, and you may make multiple power blows this turn, right? So that's giving you the opportunity to play 2 attacks as well as make multiple power blows. That's very strong. Anytime you can throw out more than 1 power blow at your opponent and you can play multiple attacks, that's very, very strong, right? It's giving your opponent a lot to deal with just by simply playing this follow-up event card. Very strong card, definitely one of the best ones in his set. That's why it's being spotlighted. The next special card that is being spotlighted is called Trip. Now this is also an event. And Trip says, remove all standing defenses your opponent has in play. It has a keyword, and the keyword is discard. Your opponent must discard a dodge from their hand. This is a very, very good card, right? So if your opponent is playing a lot of standing defenses, you throw down Trip, and now they have to remove all of those standing defenses, whether it's a guard or certain situations that qualify as standing defenses, right? So they're immediately gone, right? They're moved to your opponent's discard pile. And then it also has a second keyword, discard. Your opponent must discard a dodge from their hand, right? So even if they don't have any standing defenses in play, this is giving you a second stipulation that your opponent has to follow, and that's they have to discard a dodge from their hand, right? So you throw this out, they have to remove all standing defenses that they have in play, and if they don't have any, they still have to discard a dodge from their hand. Very good card if you're trying to get your opponent to burn through their defenses or pitch their defenses. Very, very good card. That's why it's in there. That's why it's being spotlighted. So the next special card we're going to take a look at, it's an object, and it's called Bone Armor, right? Because the Kurgan, he loved his bone armor. That's what his armor was. And Bone Armor says, reduce all damage from events or plots played by your opponent to 0, right? So this is going to protect the Kurgan from cheese, right? Basic cards like events that are just going to say your opponent takes 1 damage, or your opponent or a plot that says, hey, when you have this amount of plots in play, your opponent takes this amount of damage. So that's going to reduce that damage to 0. It's armor, and that's what it's there for. So definitely one of the best cards that come in his set, and that's why it's being spotlighted. Let's take a look at the next one. So the next special card is called Skull Helmet, and it's also an object, right? So the Kurgan is really building his armor. He's putting on his armor when you get these cards in play. Now, Skull Helmet says cost. That's the keyword. Your opponent must discard an attack to play an attack from their hand. So basically when the Kurgan's putting on his armor, he's basically building a defense against whatever his opponent's going to be trying to do. Just like with Bone Armor, right? You reduce all damage from events and plots to 0, then you put on your Skull Helmet, and your opponent must discard an attack to play an attack from their hand. That's basically saying, hey, I'm protecting myself, and I'm also not allowing you to attack me back. Very good card. It is an object. It is a special card. That's what we're taking a look at first. I love this card. Bone Armor and Skull Helmet, definitely some of the best that go in his set. So let's take a look at the next special card. So the next special card that we're going to take a look at is called Warhorse, and it is an object, right? So the Kurgan loves his Warhorse, right? If you remember in the first movie where Connor and the Kurgan first meet on the battlefield, Kurgan was riding his Warhorse, right? So the Kurgan is going to implement his Warhorse in the battle, right? And the Warhorse says, you may ignore the effects of any card your opponent has in play that forces you to discard a defense from your hand. Very strong, very good right away, right? It also says you may ignore any effects your opponent has in play that forces you to discard a defense to play a defense. That's even stronger, that's even better, right? And it also says you may not be made prone, and if Warhorse leaves play, you lose 1 ability. So right away, Warhorse is a very strong object. Very, very good for the Kurgan to use. It's getting around your opponent, forcing you to discard a defense from your hand. And it's also going to get around your opponent, forcing you to discard a defense to play a defense. So that's very strong. It also says that you cannot be made prone. You never want to be made prone. When you're prone, you're going to be in a very tight situation, and it's going to be very difficult for you to play cards and get around whatever your opponent's trying to do for you, right? So they had to add some sort of drawback to playing Warhorse, right? And so that is basically, if Warhorse leaves play, you lose one ability. But Warhorse is very, very strong, very good card. That's why it's in there. That's why it's being spotlighted. If I'm going to build a Kurgan deck, I'm definitely going to be riding my Warhorse into battle. I would definitely take a look at that. So the next special card that we're going to take a look at is called Gimme the Prize, right? And it's a plot. So Gimme the Prize says removal. That's the key word, okay? If you use your persona power to ignore a location, you may instead remove your discarded card from the game. If you do, remove the location from the game. So basically, when you're using the persona that allows you to discard a strength to get around a location, you can instead of discarding it, you can remove that strength from the game, and then that allows you to remove that location from the game as well, right? So that's very strong, very good plot. That's why it's in there. It allows you to get around the location, so it's gone from the game, right? So if your opponent's running 3 of those, you remove it from the game. Now they've only got 2, right? So very strong card, very good one. That's why it's being spotlighted. Let's take a look at the next one. So the last special card that I feel should be spotlighted in his set is called the Perfect Warrior. Now this is a plot as well. Now the Perfect Warrior says you may ignore the effects of any edge card played in conjunction with attacks played by your opponent. Very strong, very good card, right? So that's basically allowing you to get around those edge cards that are going to be played in conjunction with an attack by your opponent, right? So let's say your opponent plays a headshot, right? And it's coming at you. And they also play an edge card with that headshot. And that edge card basically says, this attack cannot be blocked or dodged, or this attack cannot be defended from hand, etc., etc. That's going to allow you to get around that, right? You're going to be able to ignore that edge card and defend that headshot or whatever attack that's coming at you. You're going to be able to defend that and not have to worry about the stipulations of that edge card. Very good card, very good plot. That's why the Kurgan is the Perfect Warrior, right? Because he has stuff like this. He's an ancient immortal. He's been around for a long time. He's taken a lot of heads, and he's very powerful. So this is very deserving of a card to be spotlighted. So let's get into the edge cards that I feel should be spotlighted in the Kurgan set. So the first edge card that needs to be spotlighted is called Brute Strength, right? Now, Brute Strength says, play in conjunction with a power blow. Your opponent cannot play a standing defense next turn, right? So that's very, very good, right? So you play this edge card in conjunction with the power blow, and if your opponent is going to be using standing defenses like guards or certain situations, they cannot play any of those cards next turn, right? So it's going to make your power blow very hard to deal with. Very good card. That's why it's being spotlighted. Let's take a look at the next edge card. So the next edge card that needs to be spotlighted is called Strongest of All Immortals, right? And it gives you a couple different choices. Now, the first choice is choose one. Play in conjunction with a non-special attack. That attack is now a power blow. Now, the second choice that you can choose is play in conjunction with a block. That defense is now a power block, right? So what does that mean exactly? It basically means that if you want to play this edge card in conjunction with a basic attack or anything that's not really a special attack that can be made a power blow, it's now a power blow, right? Or you can play in conjunction with a block, and that block is now a power block, right? So you don't need to be making exertions for an attack to be a power blow or a defense to be, or a block to be a power block. Very good card, straight to the point, power blow or power block, you choose one. Very good card, that's why it's in there. Let's take a look at the next one. So we're going to be getting into the defenses that the Kurgan has. Now, the Kurgan isn't really an agile type of immortal, right? He's not going to be jumping around a lot. He's not going to be rolling and diving and doing all of these other things. The best defense that comes in his set is a counter duck, right? It is a dodge. So it says you may make a 0-card hard exertion to make your next attack this turn a power blow. Very strong defense. Right through card text, it's allowing you a free power blow for your next attack, right? Now, the Kurgan, like I said, he's not very agile, but this is the best defense that comes in his set. That's why it's being spotlighted. So I'd say let's get into the attacks now, because the Kurgan isn't really that agile. He's going to have this one dodge, a duck, that is the best one. Now, he does have another one, and it's a back away, but the back away is just not as good as this one. That's why it's not being spotlighted. But let's check out his attacks. So the first attack we're going to spotlight is called Dirty Trick, and it is a kick. So it's like the Kurgan is chest kicking you, or he's kicking you, or whatever it may be. It's a kick. It's doing 0 damage, right? And it says if this attack is successful, your opponent is prone. But keep in mind, you may think 0 damage really isn't that bad, right? But if you pair this with the persona power that says your non-ranged attacks do an additional point of damage, this dirty trick is now going to be doing 1 damage. Now, across the board, all dirty tricks cannot be blocked, right? So we have to understand that going into this. You cannot block this attack, right? And if this attack is successful, your opponent is prone. You do not want to be made prone. That is one of the things in Highlander. That is one of the game mechanics that you want to try to avoid. Do not be made prone, right? If you're prone, that means you have to be discarding a card to play a card. What does that mean exactly? It means that if I want to play a situation, I have to discard a situation. If I want to play an event, I have to discard an event, right? So when you're prone, your options are very limited, and it's just not a good place to be. So this attack is very good. It can't be blocked. With your persona power, it's going to be doing 1 damage, and if it's successful, they're prone. Very good attack. That's why it's being spotlighted. Let's take a look at the next one. So the next attack that we're gonna take a look at is called Master's Headshot. This is Kurgan's Master's Headshot, right? Now, Master's Headshot says this attack may be played after an evade backaway. That's very good if you're going to be using the Kurgan's backaways, right? Because normally after an evade backaway, you can only play ranged attacks, but this is giving you the option to play a headshot after an evade backaway. Very strong right away. It says this attack is a power blow. So right away, card text is making this attack a power blow. And it says if you do not play a special card, this attack is a headshot, right? So boom, very good card. It's all 3 upper grids. It's going to be hard for your opponent to defend. It's a power blow and it's a headshot. Very good card. Any Immortal that has a Master's Headshot, that card is definitely going to be spotlighted, and the Kurgan is no exception. He has his own Master's Headshot, and that's why it's being spotlighted. Very good card. Power blow. Don't play a special card. It's a headshot. Boom. Very good card. I love this card. Let's take a look at the next one. So the next attack that we're going to be taking a look at is also another dirty trick, and this is called Lead Pipe, and it's doing 0 damage. But if you're using the persona that allows your non-ranged attacks to do an additional point, it'll be doing 1. Now, dirty tricks, if you can remember, they cannot be blocked, right? So Lead Pipe says reveal. If this attack is successful, you may look at your opponent's hand and remove 1 revealed card from the game. Very strong, very good, right? So you throw out this Lead Pipe, it can't be blocked. It's doing 1 damage if you're using that persona power, and if it's successful, you get to look at your opponent's hand and you get to remove 1 card from their hand from the game. It can be a very powerful defense, a plot, a situation, whatever it may be, it's gone from the game if this attack is successful. Very good card, very good attack. That's why it's in there, and it should definitely be spotlighted. So let's take a look at the next attack. So the last attack that I feel needs to be spotlighted in the Kurgan set is a lunge. It is a special attack and it's doing 1 damage. But if you're using the persona power that boosts your damage by 1 for all non-ranged attacks, it's going to be doing 2, right? Now the key word here is cost, and lunge says cost. Your opponent must discard 1 strength from their hand to play a defense from their hand against this attack. And you cannot use any retrieval effects to retrieve this card from your discard. So that's very good, right off the bat. It's telling your opponent, hey, if you want to defend this attack from your hand instead of making an exertion, you got to discard 1 strength. If they don't have a strength in their hand to discard, then they're not going to be able to defend this attack from their hand with the defense card. Very strong. That's why it's being spotlighted. I love this card. It can catch your opponent off guard. That's why I think it's a very good attack. One of his best attacks. That's why it's in there. All right, my fellow Immortals, this is where we're going to get into the Holy Ground rating, where we rate the Immortals on their power level, the lore accuracy, and the fun factor. So right off the bat, the power level of the Kurgan, I would say both of his powers, depending on which persona that you're going to use, are going to be rated at a C+ to a B-. They're not super strong, but they're not weak either, right? So they're kind of like right in the middle, C+ to B-, right? So that's kind of where I feel the Kurgan is going to land with his persona powers, right? So I feel he gets a solid C+ to a B-. There are definitely Immortals in the game that have a stronger power when it comes to their persona power. So that's why I gave him a C+ to a B-. minus, right? So the lore accuracy is going to come into play here, right? Is the Kurgan lore accurate from the Highlander universe into the card game? My prediction and my determination is yes. He's very lore accurate from the franchise to the card game, right? In the Highlander universe, right? He's a very powerful immortal, and he's got some very powerful cards that go along with him. So he's definitely lore accurate, right? Now, the fun factor, the last determining factor in the Holy Ground rating, I would say yes. The Kurgan is definitely fun to play. He's got a couple of different personas that you can use to build different types of decks with. And, you know, he's a strong immortal. He's got very good cards, and that's why he's extremely fun to play, right? No matter how you build the Kurgan, it's going to be fun, right? He's a powerful immortal, throwing out powerful attacks. He's going to be beating your opponent down with either power blows, or he's going to be getting around certain things by discarding strength. So very fun to play. When it comes to the overall Holy Ground rating, from power level, lore accuracy, and the fun factor, I'm going to give the Kurgan a solid B rating overall when it comes to power, lore, and fun, right? He gets a B. Now, I would give him a higher rating if his persona powers were a little bit better, but overall, he's powerful, he's lore accurate, and he's fun to play. So that's kind of where I feel the Kurgan stands, right? His power, solid B minus to C plus, right? He's lore accurate, and he's extremely fun to play. So that's kind of where I rate the Kurgan. He gets a B overall on those three determining factors. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this Immortal Spotlight, where we highlighted the Kurgan and the best cards that come in his set. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was extremely fun to make. The Kurgan is one of my favorite immortals in the Highlander universe. I love the Kurgan, super fun to play. He's got great charisma on the screen, and he's definitely one of those immortals that when you're going to face him, you know you're going to be in for a hard, tough fight. Consider becoming an immortal today and hitting that subscribe button. We are on the road to 500 immortals, or 500 subscribers. If you liked this video, please leave it a thumbs up. If you hated this video, leave it a thumbs down. Tell me down in the comments who you want to see spotlighted next. Be on the lookout for that next video. Don't lose your heads out there. And remember, there can be only one collectible card game.